Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. My name is Nicholas Reid from Reid Corporate, and on behalf of DevEx Resources, ASX ticker DEV, it's my great pleasure to welcome you to this special investor webinar to update you on the company's uranium exploration strategy. Well, DevEx is a company that doesn't need a huge introduction. It's part of a stable of highly successful companies chaired by legendary mining investor Tim Goyder. In more recent times, DevEx has become known in the market for the high-impact drilling and exploration programs which it has underway across its Julimar and Lachlan Fold Belt projects. At the Sovereign Nickel-Copper PGE project in the Julimar region in WA, DevEx has delineated a large mafic ultramafic intrusion and is about to commence diamond drilling. In the Lachlan Fold Belt in New South Wales, a major program comprising around 16,000 metres of drilling is scheduled to kick off next month. However, today's interest is the company's Knoblak Uranium Project in the world-class Alligator Rivers Uranium Province in the NT. As many of you would know, after 12 years in the wilderness, the uranium price has taken off this year, with the spot price jumping sharply and investors rushing back to gain exposure to the sector. Against this backdrop, DevEx, which in fact started life as a listed company called Uranium Equities, has refocused attention on what was its foundation asset at Knoblak. The company's exceptional exploration portfolio encompasses the former Knoblak uranium mine, which is considered to be Australia's highest grade uranium mine, with past production of 24 million pounds at an incredible grade of 1.84% U3O8. As announced yesterday, DevEx has just completed a very fruitful review of its Knoblak project, resulting in the identification of numerous new high-grade targets, and it's embarked on an exciting 12-month program to unlock its potential. To tell us all about it, we've got DevEx's Managing Director, Brendan Bradley, with us this morning. I'm going to invite him to the podium shortly, but before I do so, if I could just remind everyone, if you do have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A tab on your screen and send them through during the presentation so that I can put as many questions to Brendan once he finishes his presentation. So without further ado, thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to welcome Brendan to the podium to present the DevEx uranium story. Welcome, Brendan.
Okay, this is our usual disclaimer, which I invite you to read at your leisure. We've updated our presentation today onto the ASX platform and also onto our company website, so you can read this at your leisure there. So DevEx Resources, and Nick's already given a fantastic summary of what we're about, and in summary from myself, is DevEx is a publicly listed ASX company and with 308 million shares on issue, and we're trading roughly around 30 to 35 cents on the platform, with and importantly with $16.6 million in cash in the bank as of last quarter. This is important to us, as many would appreciate, is that it gives us the ability to really focus on our core exploration projects, both in the eastern states, Western Australia, and also now over the next 12 months in the Northern Territory. We've got drilling planned both in the east and the west, and then later in the year also in the territory of our Knoblak project. We're looking forward to getting on with the job. A quick snapshot of the board. Tim Goyder, our chairman and major shareholder, needs really no introduction. However, Tim's been very much a big supporter of DevEx Resources over many, many years. Tim's been there for the long run and continues to be a supporter. Tim is also well known for his involvement with successful companies such as Chalice Mining and also Liontown Resources. And if you ask Tim's real success story is the people he builds around him, the people in all these companies. He's very much an enthusiastic explorer looking for discoveries, and that's what we're really about. Myself, I'm an exploration geologist by trade. I've been involved for well over 25 years in exploration, greenfields exploration through to discovery, resource development, and also underground mining. And likewise, within the board, we've got a high caliber board, including our non-executive director, Bryn Jones, who's been involved in the uranium industry for a very long time. And Bryn's also the managing director of Phos Energy, which is developing a technology to extract uranium out of phosphates. So today it's about Knoblak, and in a quick snapshot summary about what we're about. Besides the Knoblak project, as Nicholas was mentioning earlier, we're also very much focused on exploration in the east and west of Australia, exploring just north of Chalice's Julimar discovery or Gonaville discovery, nickel copper PG, mafic ultramafic intrusion. We're exploring at the Sovereign project there, and we've got drill rigs planned for later in October, and likewise in eastern states within the Lachlan Fold Belt, especially where we're looking for porphyry copper gold mineralisation out of Juni project, where earlier drilling this year had identified quite a significant system of copper gold mineralisation and drilling, and we're looking forward to seeing that drill rig arrive later in October to start drilling back at that project there. But today it's all about Knoblak, and I guess you'll hear me say this over and over again, maybe a little bit too much, but it's all about the grade, and it's all about high grade. That's what Knoblak has been on our portfolio for a very long time, and that's why we're excited about it. Yeah, the uranium price has been down, and we've been sort of moving that project along gently. But at the moment, with what we've been doing, we commissioned a 6-month review of the Knoblak project, looking at the historical exploration. And those that are familiar with Knoblak, it was one of the 3 mine policy uranium mines that was mined in the 80s. It was discovered in the 60s. So as you can imagine, there's 50 years of exploration data that we've been trawling through over the last 6 months, and it's really been a treasure trove of data that we've looked at. And we're coming out of that looking at a number of prospects and a multitude of targets. So just for those that are interested where we are located, we're located in the Northern Territory within what's called the Alligator Rivers Uranium Province. This is a province that's very well endowed in uranium, with over 500 million pounds of uranium defined both in resources and also in mining history. It's always been likened to the world-class Athabasca Basin in the North America, where all the uranium mines are located, and likewise in the Alligator Rivers Uranium Province, some of the big mines such as Ranger have been there for a very long time mining uranium, and likewise the area has a major history. Where we're located, importantly, we're located outside of the Kakadu National Park. We're well outside of there, in land that's freehold land owned by the traditional owners, and the elders of the Knoblak region are great supporters of our exploration activities. We hold the Knoblak mineral lease. We're centred on the Knoblak mine with a mining lease there, and also 3 granted exploration licenses in the area surrounding, and then a larger portfolio of exploration applications, which sort of totals about over 4,500 square kilometres in a really prolific area of uranium prospectivity. So yeah, as I mentioned, we're surrounded on the Knoblak uranium mine, and again, the history of that was it was discovered in the 70s and then mined in the 80s for a very high grade of 1.84% for 24 million pounds of uranium. What's not mentioned often, but we like to record it and mention it forward, is that this province is also, in my view, a very significant gold and copper province as well. All of these uranium deposits through here have made discoveries earlier in the 80s of gold mineralisation. Jabiluka, Ranger and Koongarra, and especially Coronation Hill, all talk about gold discoveries in the 80s, but it's been lost to time due to the focus of uranium by many of the utility miners in the region. Coronation Hill is very, very relevant to us, as many people understand, is Coronation Hill is and was a very significant deposit of gold that was discovered in an area that started its life out as a copper prospect. They found uranium mineralisation, they mined the uranium mineralisation in an open pit, and then BHP Gold started drilling significant amounts of gold underneath the uranium pit. And unfortunately, due to sensitivities around the area, the project became part of the national park, and there it sits today. But relevant to us, naturally, is that style of mineralisation, both Knoblak, Coronation Hill, and likewise at Jabiluka and Ranger, is over at our project in the Knoblak project. We see very similar styles of mineralisation. At U40, for example, we see some very high-grade uranium intercepts of 6 metres at 7% uranium, together with copper mineralisation, gold mineralisation, and also PG mineralisation. So we share a lot of similarities with some of these bigger deposits elsewhere, and that's where we're focused at the moment. So as a result of our review, we've identified multiple new prospects in the area. We've been going through over 50 years of exploration data since the discovery in the late or mid 60s. As a result, we've been going through a lot of hard copy plans, a lot of digital data, updating our databases with new mineralisation that we've found in the old data and producing out a slide that you see today. So what we're looking at here is the immediate area in the vicinity of the Knoblak uranium mine within our tenure. So the red outline is the Knoblak mining lease, which we hold, and then the granted tenure surrounding that. And by the colour that you see are numerous intercepts of uranium mineralisation through the region. For me as a geologist by trade, what I see is a number of uranium-bearing corridors, fault-related, that are hosting a lot of the uranium mineralisation in the area. We've got this Knoblak fault that's northwest, and then we've importantly got a feeder conduit of faults going off to the northeast that uranium mineralisation has been found. And so from our point of view, what we're now focused on over the next 12 months is in the immediate vicinity surrounding that Knoblak uranium mine. So those multitude of projects I'll take you through today, including an immediate pit edge of Knoblak prospect, also to the south, within a kilometre south of the Knoblak South prospect, and likewise on similar structures around the Knoblak mine. So what's it all about? So I'll show you, this is a snapshot of the Knoblak deposit that was mined out. And it is all about grade. For me, it's all about grade. And when you look at the grade of the northern part of the pit, bearing in mind the scale bars that you see down there, 20 metres on the cross section and 25 metres on the left on the long section, it's a very tight contained occurrence of uranium mineralisation that they mined at very high grades. Cross sections show the drilling of consistent uranium mineralisation, including of the order of 19 metres at 13% uranium, and likewise around it. So just bearing in mind that what today people talk about with uranium mineralisation in Australia, they talk about it in terms of ppm. Well, 1% uranium is 10,000 ppm. So if somebody talks to you about it in ppm, well, 13% uranium is 130,000 ppm uranium. So very high grade. And what we like about this is that we see that this high grade uranium is very much controlled by a series of structures, including the North Fault, which is on the left-hand side. You see it there. When it goes adjacent to that North Fault, we see where the high grade and the highest pot of uranium mineralisation is located. And that becomes an exploration target for what we're doing. In the immediate vicinity of the Knoblak pit, we were fortunate with this treasure trove of data to go back into the pre-mining data that exists here. What you're seeing here is a map of the Knoblak pit outline together with all the drilling that took place. The image in colour is the historical radiometric survey. It was a ground radiometric survey, really with a scintillometer. The idea is it picks up the counts per second of radioactivity that comes off the ground. That this is pre-mining, so before any disturbances. And we can see in that image with the radiometrics that while the high-grade outcropping ore body at Knoblak was found with it and very well defined, we can also see a very sharp control to the northern extension of that Knoblak pit. And likewise, it extends and follows that North Fault off to the northeast, where we believe there's a lot of opportunity to go and explore. Straight against the pit edge, there's a significant gap in drilling in that area around that radiometric anomaly. And bearing in mind that we're talking about potential structures going to the northeast, all the drilling is drilling parallel to that. So we think it's very underdone in that area, and we're planning to do additional drilling at the immediate pit edge and then follow that structure off to the northeast. Moving to the south, just for location, the Knoblak South, within a kilometre of the Knoblak pit. Again, on a similar structure, the Gabbo Fault, the intersection between the Gabbo Fault and the Knoblak Fault. There's a number of historical uranium intercepts in drilling and a good cluster of uranium mineralisation. Just showing you that in three dimensionals, where the three-dimensional view is looking to the southwest. This is a 3D view of the Knoblak South prospect, just showing some of the uranium mineralisation in this area. So the Knoblak Fault is this sort of olivey colour on the right-hand side, going off to the right towards the Knoblak pit. And then you can see the drilling for uranium mineralisation. And again, when I mentioned scale at Knoblak, what we see here is roughly a 50-metre target plunging down to the northeast with a cluster of uranium intercepts, including intercepts over 1% uranium. So broad intercepts at grades of 0.3 and then internally some high grade intercepts in that area. So what we want to do is bring the drill rig out here and drill down plunge of this area. So quite a priority target for us. Elsewhere in the region surrounding Knoblak, for example, in the eastern Knoblak prospects, following that corridor of North Fault, Gabbo Fault up to the northeast, we're just showing you several other prospects here where we've been pouring through a lot of the earlier data and some of our recent exploration in the mid-2000s. So the Knoblak East prospects, what we've inherited is really quite an impressive database of what's called radon track etch samples. We've got over 25,000 samples that have been collected in the late 80s over this region, and it's quite an intense data. To go out and do that these days would cost millions of dollars to go out and collect. So it was collected in the late 80s. And just for those that are not initiated in uranium, including me about 5 years ago, radon track etch is around the principle that uranium in the ground in a buried uranium deposit, as it decays in time, it produces one of the processes in the decay chain is it produces radon gas, and that gas leaks its way and finds its way through to the surface. And so these cups are placed in there to measure the amount of radon gas coming through to the surface, and then they record the amount of etching into the film that they get. So and whilst it sort of sounds all sort of interesting science, it's been very much a successful technique that's been used to making discoveries worldwide. It's been used extensively in the Alligator Rivers area with some success. For example, at U40 prospect, although that they did this radon track etch in the late 80s, later in 2015, drilling into that radon track etch anomaly returned results like what you see there, including 6 meters at 7% uranium, including some significant copper and gold and platinum palladium mineralization. So using that data set, we're identifying a number of undrilled anomalies in very similar structural context to the Knoblak deposit. At KP prospect, sitting over the what we call the Kombolji sandstone, which is acting as a cap rock to underlying uranium mineralization, potentially. What we see is, again, a strong, very high order radon track etch anomaly there that hasn't seen any drilling. The U40 to Zeus corridor, I mentioned the intercepts at U40. That corridor is quite prospective, and there's a number of radon track etch anomalies that haven't been found. There's the Zeus prospect where drilling into that radon anomaly didn't find any uranium and it remains unanswered, but found copper mineralization. And again, pointing you towards U40 prospect where 2% copper is quite regularly found with the uranium. We think that they're related to each other, and we think that that area there is underdone along that corridor. So there's a number of these anomalies that we need to follow, and a number of these really attractive structural corridors that we're looking forward to focusing on over the next 12 months. So our strategy over the next 12 months, the Northern Territory, the top end wet season's upon us. We have an all-weather we have a bitumen all-weather airstrip right beside the Knoblak uranium mine, next to our all seasons camp at the area. We plan to continue exploration through the wet season and then come in with a drill rig at the beginning of the dry season next year. And so the wet season typically starts in late October and works its way through to around about April. So as soon as it's dry in April next year, we plan to come back and start drilling these targets through here. But we're going to be pretty active up here as well as on our projects in both Western Australia and in the eastern states. So we're cashed up with $16 million in the bank. We've got the momentum to explore all three projects. Where the discovery is, that's what we're about. And finding high-grade uranium is really what we want to do up in the Northern Territory. So I'll leave you with that. And Nick, thank you.
Thanks very much, Brendan. We'll go to questions now, and just a reminder to everyone listening in, please submit your questions using the Q&A tab, and I'll get them on my phone here. But before we go to the first of those questions, I might just kick off, Brendan. Can you give us a bit of a history of these assets, how you came to secure such a big ground position at Knoblak? Just a little bit of history around how this project came about? Yeah,
the Knoblak project was mined in the very early 80s and then processed for 8 years during the 80s. And then after about 1988, exploration slowed down and more or less sort of came to a grinding halt for many years after that. Our company at the time, Uranium Equities, purchased the Knoblak mine. We bought it off the then miner Queensland Mines or Queensland Metals, and we purchased that in 2008. And then through various joint ventures with the North American explorer Cameco, we earn 100% into those projects surrounding those exploration licenses surrounding it. So it's been an exciting sort of 2008 onwards exploration history. Naturally, with the uranium price and the Fukushima event taking place and the drop in the uranium price, exploration has been sort of on a come and go sort of basis. And so with this kick up in the uranium price, we're really looking forward to getting back and giving it the focus it deserves.
Just a bit more history, Brendan. I enjoyed the picture of the historic picture of the pit and the airstrip up there at Naval. That's not many exploration projects that have got that sort of infrastructure available. Tell us a bit about the mine itself. Who owned it? When did it finish production? Are there any remnant resources left from that period, or was it completely mined out?
Yeah, look, it's based on the data that we've got. The deposit is cut by those faults, and so in terms of the pit that mined it, the main part of the deposit was found. What we're looking for is that extension to where that uranium mineralisation has been either dislocated or moving to. The history of the deposit is that it was part of that three mine policy back in the 80s, and it was found with a radiometric survey. Naturally, the uranium was sitting there on surface, so grades up to 75% uranium were recorded in trenches over the top of that deposit at the time. Because it's such a contained deposit of very high grade uranium, with 24 million pounds mined from it, it was actually mined very quickly. It was mined over 4 or 5 months, brought to the surface, put on a special pad, and then processed for 8 years with the bulk of the ore moving to Japan through that mining process. And then after that, in the late 80s, exploration sort of more or less slowed down, and then 2008, as I said, we purchased it.
I'll just before I go to the first of our online questions, just pick you up quickly on grade. We talked a bit about grade and high grades, just for the benefit of investors that may not be that familiar with uranium exploration or uranium assets. How do these grades compare in this area with what one would normally expect at a uranium project?
Well, I mean, it was Australia's highest grade uranium mine to begin with. It was, as those cross sections are showing you, 19% uranium. If you go and if you're a uranium buff and you start looking at uranium deposits in Australia, it's very hard to match that grade. Naturally, there's the in situ leach projects, which are operating generally at about 1,000 to sort of 500 ppm. Well, we are hard rock, very constrained, very contained, easy to mine, put it onto the surface, and again, 10% uranium is 10,000 ppm, 100,000 ppm uranium, right? So very high grade.
Okay. I'll just go to the first of our online questions from Keith Good over in Sydney. Keith says, given the possible similarities with Coronation Hill mineralisation, were the uranium intersections ever tested for PGEs, and do you intend to test for PGEs?
Oh, Keith, yes. Thanks for your question, Keith. So the Knoblak deposit itself was never assayed for gold, let alone PGEs, Keith. And it's only really in the recent years that we've started to actually assay for gold and PGEs totally. A lot of the exploration that was done in the 80s, including that 25,000 radon track edge, they also took soil samples over those 25,000 points, and they assayed for uranium, of course, but never assayed anything for gold. So gold is completely underdone, and PGEs is even less than that. So we sort of see that as a key focus. Well, even during the wet seasons, get out there, we're mapping the rocks, we're seeing very similar sorts of rocks, great looking breccias with alteration, and we're rock chipping those, looking for gold, PGEs, naturally copper, and also uranium mineralisation. We've got a large area to do, and we're already doing it at the moment. And I guess the one area where we did assay for PGEs and gold is at U40, and you can see those results in the slide. And in the announcement, we talk about the PGEs where we were within those intercepts, we're getting well above 1 gram per tonne platinum, 1 gram per tonne palladium inside of those intercepts as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brendan. We've had a few people ask just about timing of drilling, access to rigs. We're hearing obviously it's challenging to get rigs at the moment. I think you flagged that drilling will start in the dry season next year. Can you just talk us through some specifics there, and maybe also if there's a budget or an amount of drilling that you're aiming for next year?
Yeah, I think right now with the targets that we've got, we're looking at about $1.5 million worth of expenditure on the project. The wet season creates its challenges in the territory, as does COVID, as does rig availability just at this moment. What we're looking at is an expanded drill program where with the wet season almost upon us, what we see there is that it would be nice to come out there with a drill rig for an extended period of time and drill all these prospects all in a row. Start naturally in the Knoblak district and then move into those other corridors in the region. And so it's not like we're going out there to drill 2 or 3 holes. We're actually going out there for quite an expansive drill program. So we're looking at multiple holes in the region, targeting those prospects as well. The all-weather airstrip gives us the ability to keep advancing those prospects. We're out there rock chipping now. We're out there mapping. We're following up on a number of other little uranium intercepts in the area surrounding it, at likewise at prospects like Overload and Black Brim. We're wanting to get back into those areas which we think is completely underdone and start looking at those regions.
I've got a question, online question here from Eric Lucci. It's quite a broad one, but I want to put it to you, Brendan, because I think perhaps you could expand on the size. What he says is, how do you envisage that Naval exploration activity is going to translate into shareholder wealth? I wondered if perhaps you could touch on, the scale of the company's portfolio up there, and perhaps, we've seen some peers in the region have quite spectacular performances on the market recently. So perhaps you could give us a few comments on that.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, we're exploring the Alligator Rivers province. There's really, as far as I'm aware, making an impact at the moment. There's 2 other companies in the area, including Vimy Resources and Alligator Energy. They're doing fantastically well with regards to their share price and market capitalisation. Likewise, we're exploring that area quite intensively, but it's a very limited pool of these sort of hard rock, high grade uranium explorers out there in Australia, and when you come up to the Knoblak region, we're sitting there surrounded the best mine that was the best mine in the 80s, and that's what we're focused on. Broadly within the other areas, I think what we have is we have granted tenure, we have land access agreements with the traditional owners, and those land access agreements also see the commercial frameworks for what mining will be eventually. So under the Northern Territory ALRA process, if you make a discovery, well, in our access agreements, we've got a lot of that commercial framework already in there, so things can move through and forward that way. And we have an existing mining lease at Knoblak that's right through to 2032 with the opportunity to extend. So we're well set up for more discoveries.
That segues quite well into another question that we've had, which is the jurisdiction. If you are successful in discovering and delineating resources, what are the prospects for actually getting something into development and production? I mean, obviously you're sitting next to a mine, so one presumes pretty good, but can you give us a few comments on that?
Yeah, I think most people will look at the tradition of the region and some of the hassles that have been seen or some of the issues that have always been raised. We're outside of the national park. That's a big issue. That's a big plus for us. Okay, as I mentioned, with the agreements we have with the traditional owners and with the elders, we also have great support from the elders. We constantly work with them. They're up visiting us regularly, looking at what's going on. They were involved in the mining at Knoblak. They were living and working at Knoblak during the 80s, and they have fond memories of it, and they're very keen for us to make more discoveries out there because they're keen to get back out there themselves. And it's actually surprising to see just how much support we have from them. And we meet with them very regularly, and that support's there. We have obviously NT government support for the exploration that we're doing, and likewise with the regulatory authorities there. We go through the process of putting in our applications. We're waiting for the approval for the drilling we've got planned, but we see that as routine.
Got some great questions coming in, so I'll keep going with them. Question from Andre here: are you likely to keep your uranium assets within DevEx, or would you consider spinning them out into a separate listing, considering the expenditure requirements across your portfolio?
Yeah, it's a question that gets raised. I guess I'm an explorer. My purpose is to make discovery to grow shareholder wealth. That's Tim's success story as well. We've done the hard yards over the last 6 months, pulling all this data together. I'm really keen to drill this project, but there's a lot of interest out there about uranium, and how do you see it valued properly within DevEx resources with regards to other exciting projects, both in eastern states and Western Australia. Is there a way to get better value from shareholders? That's something we always talk about and we always would consider. Right now, we've got these targets. I want to drill them. Let's see where we're at the beginning of the dry season next year.
Fantastic. You have partly answered some of these questions, but I will cover off on them. So Des Moriarty asks, he says, assuming that exploration is successful, number one, what kind of permitting is needed or in place to allow export from Knoblak? Two, would you go to producing yellowcake or ore for export? And number three, in what country or countries do you see processing of your product?
I want to make that discovery first, naturally, but I guess you look at the history of Knoblak itself. Okay, it's existing mining lease. It has an environmental impact statement that's already produced for it. Naturally, if we make a new discovery on the exploration licenses, we've got to go through the right process, the smart process. We've got to engage with our traditional owners for their benefit as well. We've got to look at the environment and all the usual things that a new uranium mine would need to do. But it has a history of mining. It's already been mined there. It has that support network that's already in the area. I think right now the challenge is let's get some drill holes into these and let's start defining some resources and make some discoveries. And then who's going to take the product, the export license overseas, all of those processes, they've just got to happen.
And another related question from Daniel Jolly. Do you think that there could be a fast track option for a mine restart within the existing Knoblak mining lease to prepare for the uptick in uranium markets?
We make a discovery inside that mining lease. That's a lot of hassle or a lot of processing that we need to do that's already done for us. And naturally, there's licenses, export licenses, moving it through. But again, as I said, it's already been done before. Follow that process again, updated to the 1980s through to 2020s. I'm sure there's a little bit of paperwork to do, but yeah, that's why we're focused on the Knoblak area immediately around the mining lease anyhow, including the mining lease where naturally we're permitted.
Thanks, Brendan. I might just quickly ask you on the macro picture. That's the backdrop to this exploration strategy, and we appreciate your exploring. So it's, production's a way down the track, but do you have a view of what's going on in the uranium space at the moment and the outlook over the next, I suppose, 2 to 3 years?
Oh, the outlook's glowing, yeah, that's right. Although I'm an exploration geologist focused on discovery, I'm talking about the uranium price, I'm as good as any other punter in the street. But having sat next to some of the other uranium miners out there or near uranium miners and talking about, spot price availability of uranium on the spot market and the shortfalls there and what buying's going to do and what the strategy is, there's an avenue to see growth in the uranium price. I can talk about the environment and the importance of uranium taking a place in that process, but there's a lot better people out there than me and you can just quickly Google them and seeing that side of things. I think what I would say is that, if you find a Knoblak deposit inside that mining lease or around the vicinities of the grade, it's not about the cost of mining. It's not about any of that. This is a high-grade deposit with a lot of value in that ground that, getting it out of ground is not going to be the challenge.
Fantastic. Look, I think we've covered off on most of those questions, but before we let you go, just a couple of quick ones on Julimar and Lachlan Fold Belt. Obviously, that's going to be where the action's going to be in the sort of near term. Can you just give us a quick snapshot of what we should all be looking forward to in the next few weeks on both fronts there?
Starting in the west, at our Sovereign project, we have been exploring there over the last 6 to 12 months. What we've defined now is similar to the Gonaville intrusion, is we're seeing now with our air core drilling that we've now mapped a 12-kilometre long mafic ultramafic intrusion. And so, we're very comfortable now that where we've started from to where we are now, that we've got the right rocks. What we're looking for is high-grade nickel copper PG mineralization associated with the lower part of that ultramafic where our air core drilling is defined. So at the moment, the next step is that we're mobilising a drill rig in the next few weeks to start drilling into the ultramafic part of this intrusion. What we're doing with this drill rig is we're trying to understand more about the geometry of the intrusion. So we're drilling several diamond holes into that part of the intrusion. We're naturally using gravity and geophysics to sort of give us a focus for where it's got its best chance of going into the lower parts of this intrusion, and that's what we're planning to do. Meanwhile, we've got a ground EM crew that's out there at the moment doing ground EM over this 12-kilometre long intrusion. So it's going to take several months to get the full coverage over that. And as we're looking for massive sulfide deposits in the area, any EM conductors that we do start to see, well, we've got a drill rig coming out on site shortly, we'll naturally retask that rig to drill those conductors as well as what we're planning to do. Over in eastern states, we've got this Nangus Road prospect at Uranium Project. I really like it. We started with the view that we're looking for porphyry copper gold deposits. We're exploring immediately south of some big major North Americans like Newmont that are exploring to the north of us. What we like about Nangus Road is that we came in there with a concept. We did some broad-spaced air core drilling, 400 by 200 metre spaced air core drilling. So again, if you imagine what 400 metre holes are like in space, look outside your window to get a context. And what we found is we've got a 2-kilometre long copper gold system defined from that air core drilling with grades up to 3.5 grams per tonne of gold. We've done IP over that, and we're seeing strong chargeability anomalies underneath that copper gold zone. And for those not familiar with IP, it's really looking for it's a technique that's used to look for disseminated sulfides in the ground, and porphyry copper gold deposits are disseminated sulfides. Sure, it'll find something else, but when you see an IP anomaly sitting directly underneath some pretty anomalous copper gold air core intercepts on broad spacing, I'm really keen to get that drill rig out there. And so later in October, once the area dries out, we plan to be up there with both an RC diamond rig to drill the sections that we've got, and also a RAB rig to really go and intensify the drilling on tight spacing over that prospect.
Just one final follow-up from Eric, and I think you'll be happy to answer this based on what you just said. He said, in pursuing uranium exploration at Naval, is there a risk that you may lose focus on exploring the other projects such as Sovereign?
Our focus is discovery. So our focus is drilling holes and getting some significant intercepts to build shareholder wealth. When you look at our prospects, including Knoblak in many ways, our prospects are not heavily drilled. We're not looking and trying to fit targets inside of drill holes. At Sovereign and at New South Wales, those targets are just unconstrained. So you get some good drill hole intercepts, maybe like similar to other our peers in the area. I think we're looking to grow significant value. So losing focus just because we changed a commodity in the periodic table, no, we're focused on drill hole discovery. So can we do it with our cash, with our team? We've got 7 geologists working for us, both in Northern Territory, eastern states, based in the eastern states, and also in Western Australia. So no, we're keen to make that discovery hole.
Fantastic, Brendan. I think we've dealt with the questions. I might just leave you to say a couple of words just to wrap up for people.
Oh, thanks, Nick. Probably just wrapped it up really with what our focus is, but I would just say that just keep watching. We've got cash to give us the momentum, and it's all about momentum. It's all about where that drill rig's going to move to next, where we're going to deliver those sort of results that we're hoping for in the area, whether it's at Junee, whether it's in the Cobar district, or whether it's also at Sovereign Project, or now that we've now got on top of the Northern Territory at Knoblak, what we're focused on is discovery, and we've got the rigs. We're planning to do the drilling over the next 12 months, and we've got news flow to flow. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Brendan, and thank you to everyone for tuning in this morning. Thank you for your questions. They were fantastic. As you can hear, a unique story in the exploration space, a fantastic group of people, fantastic balance sheet, and 3 projects which are going to generate a lot of news flow over the coming year. So a stock to keep on your watch lists. I would also just like to mention that DevEx and Brendan will be one of 40 fantastic companies presenting at our Resources Rising Stars Mining News conference, which is going to be in Perth on October the 14th and 15th. For those of you in Perth, fantastic opportunity to come down and catch up with 40 great companies. Brendan will be there with his team and many others. And for those who are based in the eastern states, the entire event will be live streamed from beginning to end. We've got some fantastic keynote speakers, including Peter Costello, who'll kick off day one of the conference. So we encourage everyone who's interested to visit our website, which is www.rrsinvestor.com, to register for that event. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to bringing you more companies in the near future. Have a good day. Thank you.